God has confirmed. The time of the promise has arrived. Let me tell you something that might sound strange, even a little controversial. Maybe you're not late. Maybe you're exactly on time. Most people believe that when things take a long time, it's because God is silent. But what if the silence is precisely the sign that everything has already been decided behind the scenes? Funny, isn't it? We were taught to expect obvious signs, wide-open doors, noisy miracles. But the God's timing, it almost never works that way. He arrives quietly, precisely, surgically. Now think about this. What if this tiredness you've been feeling isn't failure, but a transition? What if this feeling of limbo, of not being where you were, but not yet having arrived where you dream of being, is exactly where you are? Promise, is it starting to take shape? Many people give up here because they think they're standing still, when in reality they're being realigned. And that changes everything, because those who understand this moment stop begging for answers and start developing discernment. The paradox is this: the closer you get to the turning point, the less obvious the path seems. That's where the applied faith, not that beautiful faith of speeches, but the faith that observes, adjusts, acts, and trusts, even without visible guarantees. People who achieve prosperity with purpose, they don't get it right because they know everything, but because they learn to recognize the right timing. And if you're watching this now, you can bet it's not by chance. There's something here that speaks directly to your story. The question isn't whether God has something prepared for you. The question is, do you know how to recognize when the time has come? Because those who miss this moment almost always miss it for a simple reason. They were looking in the wrong direction. And in the next few minutes, you will understand signs that almost no one explains, but that completely change the way you see your own life. The spiritual window. When God's timing meets its preparation. You know when you feel like there's something in the air, as if life is holding its breath before something happens? Well, a lot of people call that anxiety, but it's not always that. Sometimes it's just God's timing. It slips into your routine with that, "Come on, now it's going to happen," look. And the most curious thing, this opportunity doesn't come with a sign, doesn't sound a siren, doesn't send an email invitation. It appears in the simplest way possible, in a conversation, in an idea, in a discrete opportunity that seems common. But behind all this, there's a pattern. Promise, it doesn't arrive making noise. It arrives asking discernment. Napoleon Hill would call this the supreme opportunity, but I'll translate it into everyday language. It's that moment when you look back and think, wow, if I had realized it, I would have turned the key then. Because the God's timing, it usually comes disguised as something small. Someone recommends you for a job, a friend introduces you to someone, a video appears at the right time, a door opens without explaining why. And then comes the part that almost nobody likes. It's not enough to believe in it. Promise, you have to have applied faith. That faith that gets you up from your chair and takes the first step, even without seeing the whole staircase. Otherwise, the opportunity passes you by, and you only realize it when it's already become a memory. Now let me give you a very practical example, without any forced mysticism. If you want prosperity with purpose, don't wait for $1 million to fall from the sky. Start positioning yourself. Write down on a piece of paper today what you want clearly, simple and direct. How much, why, in what time frame, and what the impact will be. Then, create a small habit that trains your eye to synchronicity. Every day, write down 3 signs from your day. A conversation, an idea, a useful coincidence, and more. When even the smallest opportunity arises, like sending a message, asking for a referral, offering a service, take it immediately. Because God's timing, it usually tests whether you recognize the call, before handing you the complete package. And then comes the detail that changes everything. Sometimes the next signal isn't open door, it's pressure. Did you like topic 1 as it is, or would you like some adjustments? More emotion, more practical examples, more humor, a stronger spiritual feel, or more text? Pressure as confirmation. When difficulty isn't delay, it's alignment. There's a common mistake almost everyone makes, thinking that when life gets tough, God has turned away. But look, that's almost never the case. Most of the time, when the pressure mounts, it's precisely because God's timing, it's getting closer. It's like a plane taking off. The noise increases. The force against the ground grows. Everything seems unstable. But it's not falling. It's momentum. Promise. It rarely arrives in a comfortable situation. It arrives when you can no longer pretend that everything is fine staying where you are. Napoleon Hill realized this by studying people who achieved prosperity. In reality, before the turnaround, there was chaos, lack of money, internal doubts, external criticism, sleepless nights, not because they were wrong, but because they were being prepared. And here's something subtle. Pressure reveals who you become when you're not in control. Do you complain? Do you freeze? Or do you start acting with applied faith, even when tired, even when insecure? The character needed to uphold the promise is built precisely in that difficult situation, not after everything works out. Now, bringing this down to real life. When the pressure mounts, change the question. Instead of, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What is this trying to develop in me?" If it's financial, learn basic management. Books like Think and Grow Richer, The Richest Man in Babylon, they help a lot. If it's emotional, cut out distractions and create a minimal routine. If it's mental, write down thoughts and ideas instead of fighting them. Because the more consciously you respond to pressure, the more you notice something strange happening. Certain coincidences start to repeat themselves. People appear out of nowhere. Ideas keep coming back. And that leads to the next point. These synchronicities, which almost everyone ignores. Synchronicities. When God speaks softly but with surgical precision. There is a type of language that God uses that almost no one learns to listen to, because it doesn't shout. It whispers. It's these synchronicities, those coincidences, that happen too often to be just chance. You think of something and, out of nowhere, someone touches on that exact subject. You ask for a sign, and without looking for it, a book, a video, or a conversation answers. In God's timing, nothing is random. It's just subtle. And those who are distracted miss what was designed specifically for them. Napoleon Hill called this sixth sense. That perception that doesn't come from logic, but from the connection between mind, purpose, and action. And here's an important point. Synchronicity isn't meant to comfort you. It's meant to guide you. It points to movement. It's like a spiritual GPS. It doesn't explain the entire route, but it says, "Turn here now." The problem is that many people receive the signal and ignore it because it seems too simple, too small, or too good to be true. Witty, but, promise, it rarely arrives grand at the beginning. It arrives in an embryonic state. Let's make this really practical. From today onwards, if something repeats itself 3 times, an idea, a name, an invitation, a theme, don't discard it. Write it down, observe it, act on a micro scale. Sending a message, making a call, researching something for 15 minutes is already applied faith. Furthermore, create a simple ritual at the end of the day, asking yourself, where was there alignment today? This trains your mind to switch off autopilot and into alignment mode, discernment, because the more you acknowledge these connections, the more they intensify. And that's when something curious happens. What once satisfied you begins to lose its appeal. The holy discomfort. When what was once enough starts to bother you. There comes a point when nothing is exactly wrong, but everything seems out of place. Work pays the bills. The people around you are familiar. The routine works. And yet, something inside you says, it wasn't supposed to be just this. This unease isn't ingratitude, nor a gratuitous existential crisis. Often, it's the God's timing, turning off the autopilot. When the promise it approaches, comfort loses its anesthetic effect. What once distracted now irritates. What once sufficed now weighs heavily. Napoleon Hill observed that, before the great turning point, successful people go through a period of creative restlessness. Nothing satisfies because the soul has already glimpsed something greater. It's like growing your foot and trying to wear the same shoe. It doesn't hurt because the shoe is bad. It hurts because you've grown. And here lies a silent risk. Trying to numb this discomfort with excessive distraction, empty consumption, endless entertainment. When you do this, you don't eliminate the calling. You only postpone the encounter with it. Want a simple yet powerful exercise? Every time something deeply bothers you, ask yourself, is this pushing me away from or bringing me closer to myself? Prosperity with purpose. If the response is distancing, slow down. If it's approaching, even if it's scary, observe carefully. Exchange an hour of distraction for 20 minutes of study or planning. Books like Smarter Than the Devil Hill's own writings help to identify these invisible escape mechanisms. Because holy discomfort doesn't want to punish you. It wants to move you. And when you accept being moved, something begins to change around you, including in the people who surround you. External resistance. When people change, because you changed first. A little discussed but extremely accurate sign that the God's timing. When you're in action, that's when some people start looking at you differently. Subtle comments arise. Jokes disguised as advice appear. And even those who previously supported you begin to question your decisions. This doesn't happen because you're wrong. It happens because your change creates contrast. When the promise it begins to align from within, the environment senses it before it understands. Napoleon Hill called this resistance from the middle. It's not a direct attack, it's noise. People who say, take it easy, this isn't for you, be more realistic, Proctor. But curiously, these voices almost always come from those who have never tried anything different. And here's the key point. Pleasing everyone is too expensive. The price is usually yours. Applied faith, the discernment. It comes in precisely to distinguish genuine advice from borrowed fear. In practice, this requires a quiet approach. Don't discuss vision with those who only see limitations. Instead, observe who expands you and who drains you. Reduce your exposure to negative conversations. If possible, get closer to content, people, and environments that talk about real growth. Podcasts, books, mentorship programs, communities. The Talent Code and Think and Grow Rich. These are good reads for this moment. Because when you change your surroundings, something curious happens. Ideas begin to emerge more clearly, as if they came from nowhere. And that's the next sign. Sudden ideas. When insight doesn't come from logic, it comes from alignment. Sometimes the best idea in the world pops into your head in the shower, while driving, or minutes before bed. Out of nowhere. Clear. Vibrant. And it almost always comes accompanied by a treacherous thought. This is too simple, or it probably won't work. But look, when the God's timing it synchronizes with you, the ideas don't come fully formed, they come actionable. Promise, it begins as a seed, not as a tree. And those who wait for perfection before acting often kill insight before it even has a chance to breathe. Napoleon Hill called this superior intelligence manifesting itself through a prepared mind. Translating this to real life. When you study, observe, discipline yourself minimally, and maintain applied faith, your mind becomes a better channel. Ideas don't arise to be admired. They arise to be tested. A business starts as a conversation. A project starts as a draft. A change starts as a small decision. The problem isn't a lack of ideas. It's excessive procrastination. Ignored insights become accumulated frustration. So do this. From now on, write down every idea that comes to mind, even the crazy ones. Choose one per week and take a small step. Research for 20 minutes. Send a message. Create a draft. No drama. No announcing. Just movement. That's it. Discernment in action, because the more you honor small ideas, the more big ideas appear. And it's curious, when you start acting like that, something changes inside. Even with chaos outside, a strange, almost inexplicable peace emerges. And that's exactly what the next sign points to. Peace amidst chaos, when certainty arrives before the outcome. This is one of the quietest and, at the same time, most powerful signs that the God's timing, it's active. On the outside, life may be chaotic, but inside there's a strange calm. It's not euphoria, it's not empty excitement. It's a peace firm, almost stubborn, independent of circumstances. A promise it hasn't manifested physically yet, but something inside you already knows. And when you know, you stop panicking. Napoleon Hill observed that people who achieve true prosperity, they learn to operate from that inner certainty. They didn't wait for the environment to improve to feel safe. They felt safe first. That is, applied faith, at the most mature level. It's not about denying reality. It's about not letting it dominate you. It's about continuing to work, learn, adjust, even when everything seems too slow. In practice, protecting this peace becomes a strategic priority. This means filtering what you consume, who you talk to, and where you place your attention. If something steals your clarity, reduce it. If something strengthens your focus, deepen it. Simple practices help a lot. 5 minutes of daily silence, written gratitude, reading before bed, something like. The power of the subconscious mind, for example. Because the more stable you become internally, the less you get lost comparing your journey to others. And when comparisons disappear, you have more energy for something essential. Total focus on your own path. The end of comparison. When you take control of your path and everything starts to flow. There comes a crucial point in your journey when you simply get tired of comparing yourself to others. Not out of superiority, but out of clarity. You realize that looking too much at other people's lives only drains your own energy. This is a clear sign that God's timing, it is becoming established within you. When the promise, as things begin to take shape internally, comparison loses its appeal. You finally understand that each person has a different rhythm, a different price, and a different purpose, and that trying to live someone else's life is the most efficient way to delay your own prosperity. Napoleon Hill spoke extensively about a defined purpose. People who know where they are going stop being distracted by others' paths. They don't compete. They build. And here's something liberating. When you stop comparing yourself, you stop artificially rushing. Anxiety decreases, focus increases, and discernment, it becomes clearer. You start asking less, why hasn't it happened yet? And more, what's the next logical step for me now? This change in questioning changes everything. In practice, this is simple and profound at the same time. Every time you feel the need to compare yourself to others, make a deal with yourself. Instead of looking outward, adjust something within. Learn a skill, improve a process, organize your routine. Read something that expands your mind. Triumph Law. This is a great example of reading for this stage. Because when you commit to being better than you were yesterday, and not better than someone else, something curious happens. The pieces start to fall into place more quickly. And now that you've gone through all these signs, it's time to tie everything together from the beginning, the right way. Time to turn understanding into action. Now let me be very direct with you, as someone who not only wants to inspire you, but to see you truly progress. Knowledge without application becomes a burden, not power. Everything you've heard so far only starts to work when you decide to act differently. Today, not tomorrow, not when things get better. The God's timing, it doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for movement. Small, conscious, consistent. That's how promise. It stops being just talk and becomes reality. So I ask you honestly, which of these signs have you been ignoring? Where are you still waiting for permission when what's missing is applied faith? Are you perhaps asking for too much clarity when the next step is already too obvious to be comfortable? Prosperity doesn't come from giant leaps. It comes from small decisions made with discernment, a conversation you avoid, an idea you haven't tested, a habit you know you need to change. Now, do a simple but powerful exercise. When this video ends, write in the comments what practical action you will take today. Not something generic, something real. Read 10 pages of the right book. Send a strategic message. Organize your finances. Write down that idea that keeps coming back to you. Because when you declare it, you commit. And when you commit, you change your frequency. That's how prosperity with purpose, it begins to manifest itself. And if this content resonated with you, if it touched something inside you that you can no longer ignore, surrounding yourself with the right stimuli is already part of the process. So subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and keep learning, growing, and aligning yourself. Because the worst mistake isn't going down the wrong path. It's continuing to walk on autopilot after understanding all of this. God's timing. It's here. The final question is, what are you going to do with it?